I'm on my way to see my sister, so I thought now would be the perfect time to get on here and say something, because there is just too much victim blaming going on. No matter how y'all try to spin a story, no matter if y'all blaming me, y'all blaming her, whatever, it does not fucking matter. Y'all don't know me and y'all don't know her. And I'm trying to get on here and not curse as much, but y'all really got us fucked up. It doesn't matter however y'all feel, what coulda, shoulda, whatever. It doesn't matter. An innocent life was taken, and that fucking island don't want to do shit about it because they're trying to save face for their tourists. It doesn't fucking matter. We want justice.
She went on vacation to celebrate her sister's birthday. She was dancing, laughing, living. And by 3:30 in the morning, she was dead in a flipped SUV on the side of a road in the Caribbean, riddled with bullets meant for someone else. Denisha Delancy never saw it coming. None of them did. And here's the part that will stay with you long after this video ends. The people who killed her were not random. They had a plan. They had a target. And they had been watching all night, sitting in the same club, blending into the crowd, waiting for the perfect moment to make their move. Denisha just happened to be in the wrong seat. If that does not shake you, keep watching, because this story gets deeper. Before we get into it, if you are new here, this is Crime Files. Hit that like button, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you never miss a case. These stories deserve to be told, and your support is what keeps this channel going. Now let us talk about who Denisha actually was, because she was not just a headline. Denisha Delancy was 29 years old, born and raised in Liberty City, Miami, Florida. Liberty City is one of those neighborhoods that shapes you. It is a tight community, historically black, historically resilient, full of people who look out for each other. Denisha grew up there, and by all accounts, she carried that community spirit with her everywhere she went. She was a Florida State University graduate. That is not a small thing. She put in the work, earned her degree, and built a life for herself. People who knew her described her as magnetic, the kind of woman who walks into a room and you just feel her energy. She had a smile that people remembered. She was not quiet about loving life either. She traveled. She went out. She celebrated. She was fully and unapologetically present in every moment she lived. She was close to her sister, Sint. That closeness is actually what brought her to Sint Maarten in the first place. This trip was not even about Denisha. It was about showing up for the people she loved. Sint was having a birthday, and Denisha was not going to miss that. So she packed her bags, booked her flights, and flew out to the Caribbean with her sister and friend, ready to celebrate. They had a private Airbnb. They had a driver arranged. They had plans. This was not a careless trip. This was an organized getaway between women who wanted to have a good time safely. And for the first part of the trip, that is exactly what it was. Beach days, sunshine, music, laughter. Denisha was posting, living, glowing. You can see it in the footage that later circulated online. She looked happy. She looked free. Nobody on that island knew that freedom was about to be ripped away from her. On the night of March 1st, 2026, the three women got dressed and went out. They hit a popular local night spot called the White Rabbit. The music was going. The energy was right. And somewhere in that club, they crossed paths with a man named Quincy Damon Sylvester. By all accounts, Sylvester came across as charming. He was a local. He seemed to know people. He was generous and accommodating throughout the night, the kind of guy who makes you feel like you are in good hands. When the night wound down, the group made a decision that changed everything. Instead of getting back into their arranged driver's car, they accepted a ride with Sylvester. He dropped Sint and the friend off at the Airbnb first. Denisha stayed with him. Maybe they were still talking. Maybe the night was not over for her yet. Whatever the reason, she chose to keep going. And Sint went inside without her. That was the last time Sint saw her sister alive. Now here's where the tension in the story explodes, because what Denisha did not know, what none of them could have known, is that Quincy Damon Sylvester was not just some friendly local. The man she was riding with in that SUV was a suspected drug kingpin with deep roots in the Caribbean criminal underworld. He was originally from Trinidad and had set up his life on Sint Maarten, running what looked on the surface like a legitimate PVC pipe installation business on Welgeligen Road in Cahill. But law enforcement knew exactly what that business really was. It was a front. Behind it, Sylvester was allegedly moving drugs and operating within one of the most dangerous and increasingly violent criminal networks spreading across the Caribbean. And somebody had decided it was time for him to die. The surveillance footage recovered from the nightclub tells the real story of that night. While Denisha and her group were laughing and enjoying themselves, unknown men were already inside the White Rabbit watching Sylvester. Not casually, intently, tracking his movements, monitoring who he talked to, waiting. These were not random partygoers. They were there for one reason, and when Sylvester finally walked out of that club and got behind the wheel of his SUV with Denisha in the passenger seat, the clock started ticking. On Arlette Peters Road, also known as Old Cake House Road in Philipsburg, the vehicle was ambushed. Gunfire tore through the SUV. The force of the attack caused the vehicle to flip. When it stopped, both Quincy Damon Sylvester and Denisha Delancy were dead. Police initially responded to what looked like a serious traffic accident. But the moment investigators examined the scene closely, they found bullet holes. Everything changed. The police force of Sint Maarten, the KPSM, Major Crimes Team, took over immediately and reclassified it as a targeted double homicide. And this is where we need to zoom out, because the criminal network behind this hit is something else entirely. Sint Maarten had already been shaking from gang-related violence in the months before Denisha arrived. There's an all-out war between two Trinidadian gangs called 6 and 7 that started back home in Port of Spain and has since spread across the entire Caribbean. Jamaica, Grenada, Sint Maarten. These gangs have been fighting each other for years, ordering hits from behind prison walls, placing bounties on each other's heads, and expanding their drug operations island by island. Intelligence reports had already flagged their presence on Sint Maarten long before March 2026. Just months earlier, a Trinidadian dancehall artist named Plumpy Boss, who had ties to the 7 gang, was shot on an island and left critically injured with a bullet lodged in his brain. A $100,000 bounty had reportedly been placed on his head. The island was already a battleground. Quincy Damon Sylvester was allegedly connected to these same networks. His murder is believed by investigators to be part of that same ongoing war. The men who followed him out of that club that night, the men who opened fire on that SUV, are all believed to be from Trinidad. They came to Sint Maarten with a mission. They executed it. And Denisha Delancy, a 29-year-old woman from Miami who just wanted to celebrate her sister's birthday, was sitting in the passenger seat when they did. By March 4th, 2 days after the shooting, the KPSM announced the arrest of a Trinidadian national identified only by the initials AH in connection with the double homicide. He was taken into custody after officers executed targeted house searches across the island. But police were clear. AH was not the main suspect. The primary shooter and others connected to the plot were still at large. All of the identified suspects are believed to be Trinidadian nationals. The investigation is still active. More arrests are expected. But the main person responsible for pulling that trigger has not been caught. Denisha's body was brought back to Miami. Her family, who had sent her off with love and excitement just days earlier, now had to plan a funeral instead of waiting for her come home with souvenirs and vacation pictures. A visitation was held at Mitchell Funeral Home Chapel. A celebration of life followed at 93rd Street Community Baptist Church. The community came out. People who loved her filled that church and said goodbye to a woman who by every account should have had decades more of life ahead of her. Her sister Sincaria, the very person this trip was meant to celebrate, had to watch all of it. She survived that night only because she got out of the car. She went back to the Airbnb. And Denisha stayed behind. That is the kind of detail that never leaves a person. Now I want to ask you something, and I want you to sit with this honestly. How many times have you been on a trip and made a split-second decision that felt completely fine in the moment? Got into a car with someone you just met, stayed out a little longer than planned, trusted a stranger because they seemed warm and safe. Most of the time, nothing happens. Most of the time, you come home, and the story becomes a funny memory. But Denisha did everything that felt reasonable that night. She did not know who Quincy Damon Sylvester was. She had no way of knowing, and neither would you. So what does that say about how danger actually works? It does not always announce itself. It does not always look like danger. Sometimes it looks like a charming man at a nightclub offering you a ride home. Sometimes the threat is not even aimed at you. Sometimes you are just there. And here's what haunts me about this case more than anything else. Those men in that club had been watching Sylvester all night. They saw Denisha. They knew she was in that car. And they opened fire anyway. She was not a coincidence to them. She was acceptable collateral damage. That is how disposable her life was to the people who did this. Justice for Denisha Delancy means catching every single person involved in that ambush. It means holding them accountable not just for the target they came for, but for the innocent woman they killed without a second thought. If this case moved you, if Denisha's story stayed with you the way it stayed with me, please like this video, subscribe to Crime Files, and hit that bell icon so you get notified every time we cover a new case. These are real people, real families, and they deserve to be more than a trending post that disappears in a week. Let us make sure Denisha is remembered. Drop her name in the comments. Let her family know the world has not forgotten her.